The following is brought to you by the Starfleet Podcast Network, SPN, The Spin. Josh, was there a point where you wanted to tell Sam, we need to finish this fucking film? Stop adding things. We've got to close it up.
No, we'll
get it done.
No, not finished.
No. Actually, no, because I know Sam well enough to know that he's always going to do that.
Red alert.
Hey guys, I'm Big J with Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm here with Vance, also known as V-Man, with Critical Not Cynical. Now we're going to do a little bit of talk here in regards to Crisis on Infinite Excaliburs. We've got Joshua Irwin, who is the writer, director, and Samuel Cockings, who did the VFX artist work on this. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you guys is I had aspirations of doing a Star Trek fan film. And after seeing this one, I just threw my pencil in the air and said, forget about it. I'm not doing it. This just like, I can't even put it into words. It set the bar so high. It's a game changer. It really is. It was spectacular. I was basically sitting in my chair like I am now with my mouth hanging open like, wow, this was something. So I want to get right into talking about it. And any of you guys can start. We can get into like the behind the scenes, talk about that. Vance and I can give you our impressions on it. But so I can collect my thoughts. I will hand it over to you guys because I'm speechless. I gotta try to think of something here.
Well, let me first off, I know some of the history that went into the behind the scenes on this, Josh. I think this, would it be accurate to say this is a film that got made in spite of itself? Is that accurate to say?
There was so much about this film that made it hard to make, that went beyond just the logistics of it or, the year that we took making it. What I would say about this film is that it got made in its own good time is the best way to say it. It came together when it wanted to, because, I've said this before, that my original plan was that there were only going to be 4 Avalon Universe films total, and Crisis was going to be film number 3. And I came up with the idea for Crisis while we were shooting Ghost Ship. That's how far back it goes. And the original way too ambitious plan was that we would be making it in 2020. Now, obviously that didn't happen, but going beyond pandemic or anything else, we couldn't have made this film in 2020 because there are so many things that made it what it was didn't exist back then. Technology that didn't exist back then. There were changes in the editing software that came out during the post-production process that I used, Roto Brush 3.0 and stuff like that I made really heavy use of to do some of these tricks. I grew a lot as an editor and a post-production person. And a lot of the stuff that I did to make this film what it was, I couldn't have done in 2020, not to mention there was all kinds of, gear that didn't exist back then, lighting gear. I made use of all kinds of stuff that just wasn't around back then while we were making this film. So, it was like I was so gung ho. I wanted to make this movie back in 2020, but there's no way it could have been. And then, the biggest thing is that the thing that makes this movie is the cast. We really have just the right cast for this film and just the right characters for this film. And that took a long time for that to come together. I think that, you go beyond the gimmick of, okay, we've got this whole multiverse thing going on with all these different versions of characters, right? The film is about something. You know, there's that old story with Michael Piller where he was pitching a script to Gene Roddenberry, and Gene's like, "What's this about?" And Michael Piller's like, "Well, it's about this gimmick, Gene." And Gene's like, "No, like really, what's this about?" And it forced Piller to kind of take a step back and go, "What is this about?" And the thing that Crisis is about is the journey that it took to make it inspired what it became about. And what it's about is you got to just be yourself. You can't let anybody else tell you who and what to be. And as an artist, the most fundamental right that you have is to create your own art, to tell your own story in the way that you want to tell it. Nobody else can tell you how to be an artist. And I had to fight to be able to tell my story and express myself in the way that I wanted. And there were so many ugly experiences that I went through behind the scenes to get to the point where I could make this movie. I had to end a very, very long friendship in order to make this film. It was a difficult few years to get here.
Well, you talk about, because obviously anyone who's watching this has seen the film. And if you haven't, and you're watching this ahead of the film, like go watch the film and then come back watch this. But it's very freeing to actually be able to speak openly about, Crisis now that it's out in the open and we're able to, speak of it, publicly. But one of the things that I thought was really kind of clever was the fact that you had, Stargate, Avalon, you had Orville, Avalon, you had
Battlestar Galactica.
You had you just bits and pieces of everything. It wasn't just Mirror Universe, Avalon. You even had you blew up the fucking Kelvin Avalon. The Excalibur. You did a lot of things in this that you go this way, but then all of a sudden you swivel this way. One of the things I brought up to you when I saw weeks and weeks ago the early screenings of it, when you started coming to early pieces of it, and say, hey, check this out, was with Chakande, him from the Mirror Universe. I really thought, oh man, this is up there. But then he kind of goes, oh man, I don't want to be a douchebag anymore. I'm gonna go be a decent person, And I thought that was pretty kind of clever because I didn't expect that, because most fan films, especially, they take that, oh, the bad guys are up to no good. How's the good guy gonna get out of this? But you took that particular storyline. I was like, I didn't see that coming. So it was a pleasant surprise to see something like that. And it was nice because we've gotten to know each of these characters just enough that we got to see enough differences in these characters to see, oh, that is a different version of someone that we do know well enough, For Sam, something I want to kind of take to you real quick. What was it like doing so many different versions of, like, say, the Kelvin universe version of the Excalibur, and then like bringing on the first version of the Kelvin or the Avalon Constar? So many versions of different ships and just so much put in the stew for this film. What was that like, handling such a huge project?
Well, it's funny to start with where we started, because I was being pitched this like 2019, this idea, Flash was good back then, so the idea was even better. And I think I was sort of pushing for even more, because obviously the limitation is just what models do I have, what can we build, that sort of back end thing, and then just throw it on screen. But then that many years have passed, the rendering PCs have got better, the interior stuff I can now do, that wouldn't have been possible back then. So the scale is bigger. That final, phase out shot is like 36 ships. They all have things you have to do to make them look good. So it was a lot. But that was kind of the point. I vaguely kept pushing for more because that's kind of the point. So the one time we're doing this, I kind of want to melt the PC a little bit, because you're not going to see a fan film where this strange situation is going to make that much sense again without a lot of work, because this is multiple stories of build up. you don't need to have all the setup for every character. It's another film. So you get to just play with the scenario. Hence, let's just play it to its fullest. But it was great to see every alternate, I designed a custom mirror universe version of a coin just this film. Like 3 years ago, the NSCA Protector, 3 years ago, finally got to put some stuff on screen. And that's lovely. The first time these things have been done, Orville shots in Kelvin, not filling the frame or overfilling the frame. Yeah, it's fun and all its own language and weird, good weird.
The one thing I did like, and this kind of speaks to, just the little things in what you bring to the table for visual effects, is like when the Kelvin Excalibur shows up, and it's just a little bit of like turbulence of how it kind of and I enjoyed that because I was like, it's very subtle. I liked that. I thought that was kind of cool. But you bring up the having so many ships. One thing that I liked about this, that it's very easy to do in, like, say the prequel shows. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Revenge of the Sith, maybe. Like, they open up and there's like this huge ass space battle, and it's so mind numbing where you're just like, it's oversaturation of fucking ships everywhere, and you're like, I don't know, there's so much going on, I don't know what's going on, I don't care, and I give up. That wasn't here. You could look at everything and you could freeze frame it and go, this is going on, and I loved it because it was almost to the point, almost where you didn't need to freeze frame it. You could kind of pay attention to everything and you weren't overstimulated. So I appreciated that, where there was so much there. You felt like, man, this is a whole world. And almost like in Parallels, where Wesley's saying there's 275,000 ships. You didn't get that. You didn't really get that scope. It was more of a copy and paste, and that wasn't here. But you did feel the hugeness of the event, which was definitely in Josh's story with all these different crews coming together. So I think visually you really captured the story that Josh was telling, which, going back to Big J's thought process of what was going on here, dude, you were right. This is one to top them all. I think this is probably my favorite fan film, and I'm not just saying that to kiss ass here. It really was. I think this is great. It's a great film.
Well, you inspired a lot of this film, though, and again, the genesis of this film, and it's tied to the genesis of Avalon Universe itself, is back when Vance was first making all these films, and he was posting like daily, like, oh, Kelvin Menard meets regular Menard, or here's the Phantom, here's Minard. And I made this joke, like, are they all going to get together and have the Transdimensional Council of Menard? And then we just decided to do it. So that was, that thought process, just seeing that scene in my head, that was the genesis of this entire film, was seeing, all those Menards like pop up in the hollow suite and all of that. Like, oh, and I was like, oh, there wouldn't just be Kelvin, or there just wouldn't be there. What if there was Galaxy Quest? What if there was Babylon 5? What if there was Battlestar Galactica? And so that's what we did.
See, and you justify me buying all those uniforms, and you're the reason why my wife is so angry at me half the time. Like, you fat fucker, why are you doing this? That's
well, so, coincidentally, I'm the reason my wife is mad at me as well.
Wives are mad everywhere. We can't make them happy. Everywhere. They're just going to be angry. And this was something that I think, one of the main things that I believe sets this film apart from others is, yes, the visual effects were great. Yes, the story is very good. It's the scale, it's the scope of the story. The fact that you're tackling the multiverse in regards to Star Trek. And in Star Trek, that's been done in little parts here and there. And Vance just talked about one of the TNG episodes that dealt with that. But when you're talking about crossing those boundaries into other films, not so much other films specifically other films, other shows, other franchises that are brought into that I have not seen a scope like that. That is something that doesn't exist. And I was very much surprised and amazed when I saw, yes, he had all these Starfleet ships coming in, but then suddenly you've got the ones from the other shows, other franchises and series. And I'm just thinking, what? Holy shit.
The amount of licenses you got, Joshua, to make all that work. Wow, you've got every company in the world to work together.
How did you...
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Josh. How in the hell did you manage that part? How did you get... There's no way... You know how it is in a group project. As soon as you have 3 or 4 people in a room, you can't get a lot done. It takes a lot of effort to do. How are you able to get all of them on board?
Well, you don't have to do that for a fan film. And that's kind of that wouldn't have been possible. Like they're never going to give you permission. That's like, never. And that's the thing is you look at the guidelines, even for Star Trek fan films, all they say is, if you follow these guidelines, we may or may not sue you. Now they don't. They leave people alone because it's not worth their time to do that to their fans.
We're not important.
The thing about fan films that people may not realize is how prolific they are. There are fan films for many franchises. There are fan films for Alien. There are fan films for Power Rangers. There are fan films for Harry Potter, for Ghostbusters, for DC, for Marvel. You name it. There's a fan film of it. And so there's just kind of this precedent for fan art that, as long as it's not impeding the brand that it draws source material from, or not creating some kind of brand confusion, for the most part, they tend to leave fan films alone. Star Wars, for example, they support fan film producers. So it's one of those things. Now we'll see. I mean, the concept has been put out there, so whoever knows I'm doing it, but maybe it draws someone's attention. I will say that there have been a couple of fan film franchises that have crossed the line from one franchise to another. That is a thing. I've watched, like Batman fight Darth Vader and things like that. So that does exist. And
the Batman one against Alien and Predator. You ever catch that one?
Yeah. That one was a good one. Yeah. There's the most important one with Siren Head fighting that was in Star Trek. Most important one. So there's been like Street Fighter versus Power Rangers. There's so that kind of thing has happened. So it's not like it's totally new. It's maybe new to do it on this scale for Star Trek fan films, but it's not. It has sort of been done before. Yeah. Now, with regards to the whole multiverse thing. Yeah, it's been done a lot in mainstream culture. But back in 2018, when I first came up with the idea, it really hadn't been done as much back then. So again, that tells you we've been wanting to make this film for forever.
And it's one of the unique things about a fan film formula is that we are just people in our houses making a project. You're never going to see any production official with this many licenses in. Because some of these are mortal enemies. Some of these are long since gone. Who knows who owns them, don't know. So this is so unique that we put the effort in to make this, that you as the fan can say, oh, that's them. The Galaxy Quest hasn't done anything since the year it came out, right? This is super unique that fan films can do. And as a producer of too many films myself, when I watched this for the first time and Marie, my girlfriend, said, what do you think? And I said, I would never make this film. It's too big because I know exactly what it took to make it because I make them myself and I do my own stupid things that take too long. But I wouldn't have made this film. So well done you for making it because it's too much.
It's too big.
I made it. But I wouldn't do it. It's too big.
It was not easy. I can tell you that.
It's the unnecessarily cool extras. A story can be really simple. You could have been absolutely content with Mirror, JJ and Prime and Excalibur and whatever. That would have been fine. But it's the extra details that keep going and going and going. That's the bit that's like, yes, you went all out, we went all out. And that's the scope. It's the unnecessarily
unnecessary indeed, because it's like in a lot of other situations from a filmmaking standpoint, what you would do is you'd be cutting things. You know, if this were a different film, we'd be looking at scenes and cutting them and doing all this. We didn't do that. We just kept going with it and blowing it up, because it was like, well, that's the point this time around, is to just throw everything but the kitchen sink in it. I mean,
but it's not bloated though. It's a escalation of tension and of, this is actually sort of universe ending in a sense. That's why the last shot is so big, from my perspective, that many ships, that even off screen, things that keep appearing. If this isn't stopped now, there's going to be millions of ships here, and that's going to cause problems beyond belief. This is a really big problem. So it all builds that sense of it. It isn't just, oh no, this is big.
We even had I showed it to my friend Ray Myers, and he was like, hey, you should put Lone Star's Winnebago from Spaceballs in it.
Oh, that should have been there. Come on, Sam, you were so close.
It was.
Was it?
Yeah, it's in there.
Oh.
So I messaged Sam and I said, hey, let's put Lone Star's Winnebago from Spaceballs in it, and he did it.
I missed it. I thought I saw.
There's a lot in that final scene. There's a lot of
in there.
Where
there's a goddamn scimitar in that final shot. I mean, there's lots of stuff.
The one thing you talk about, the scope that it took to make this, a lot of people, like, as I watched this, and again, this is several, what is it called, where it's not the final cut, but it's like,
rough cut. Rough cut. I
watched it several rough cuts ago. Even then it was impressive. And I'm sitting there watching it. Now, spoiling it for the audience, I never met Jennifer Rader, who was next to me in engineering. And I never shot on, because when I went down to set, I shot 2 films for Josh. I shot Crisis, and I shot
Once in Future Captain.
Okay, I'm terrible with title. Yeah, I'm terrible with titles. So anyone that thinks I'm apathetic or don't care, that's not the case. I'm just absent-minded. But I shot physical with Once in Future Captain, but I never shot physical with Crisis, I don't believe. Actually, I did for the briefing room scene. I shot next to Victoria Archer. Outside that, everything else was green screen. And I never met Jennifer Rader. And when I was watching the rough cut, Josh did such a great job of shooting us next to each other, and splicing that in and doing the backgrounds of engineering, the Excalibur, his version of the Excalibur and everything in that engine room. Like I wasn't watching myself on screen, which it's very easy to do, having, like Sam, made my own films. I was watching his version of Menard. I was watching his character, finally how he wanted to do it. Because usually when I'm on screen, it's a comm box, it's, shot at home, it's, it's stuff that I've shot. But this was his version. It was him taking the character and taking the toy out of the sandbox and putting it in his sandbox and saying, let's go do this. And I was watching the character. I wasn't watching myself. I was watching the character, and I completely forgot. I've never met this lady. I wasn't in this environment. If you didn't know that I was on a green screen, you wouldn't have known. And I forgot that I wasn't physically there next to this woman. And that, I think, goes to the credit of Josh as a filmmaker. And I've said this many times, how much I respect Josh as, one, a person, but two, a filmmaker. I think he's probably the most talented person that we have in fan films, because his ambition just is beyond belief, but his talent is truly there. And to impress me on stuff that I've done, he makes me out to look better than I am. Cause I completely forgot that, wow, I've never met any of these people. And the transporter room, I was physically there too for that. I forgot. But I never met any of those people either. But you would never know that by the scene that we were together. I mean, it looks like we are all there. And that just goes to show you how one, he's very consistent, but two, the talent that he has of what he's doing. I mean, he's just remarkable, you know.
You say that, but like, and I appreciate that, but the truth of the matter is I didn't know if any of that was going to work, you know.
I would never have known, man, because you brought it. I would never have known, man.
I was making some very educated guesses, you know, like, and with Jennifer Rader, it's not just that you weren't together. You were shot a calendar year apart in two different towns.
Yeah.
So a question I've got for you guys, because this is something that you hear about in movies all the time. And I've heard you guys talk about a lot in these films. It's just how long it takes to do these. So I want to get a little more into the technical part of it, because I'm just a left brain kind of person. So when you say that it took a year, 2 years, 3 years to do this, what is it in fan films that takes that long? And specifically this one, what is the thing that you say takes so long to do? Is it getting multiple people on the set at one time based on their real life schedules, flying, money, things like that? Is it that when you click the render button on the computer, your computer is screaming for 3 days to try to export a thing? You have to save up to get a camera. Just can you tell me what do you guys mean it takes so many years to do that it took to do this film?
And before you answer, how long would it have taken if this was actually your job and this was actually, say, $1 million budget? An actual film, how long would that have taken, do you think, as your primary job?
Same amount of time, probably.
Because 6 months.
Well, okay, if I were just making this,
that's what I mean. Like, your actual job, because this is all hobby for us. If it was your job, you could do it in 6 months, right?
Sure, yeah, easily.
Yeah. But that's not what we do.
If you had the same people, and this, I mean, if this was Josh's full job and he had the same people, no, it would take the same time, because you still are left with the constraints of those people. If this was your full job and you're like, well, now I can go hire the people that I now could, then it would take 6 months.
I could have post-produced it a lot faster, because in the time that it's taken me to actually post-produce this film, I've made 250 some odd local TV commercials during the day. So there's that factor. But well, look, if we were all doing this, if we all were making Avalon and that was a real thing for Paramount Plus, we could have shot that entire film in 7 days, and it would have been 1 week worth of shooting. We wouldn't have had to do all this green screen trickery because everybody would have been there on set, so it would have probably been a lot faster. Now, the whole characters interacting with their doppelgangers thing, that would still be the same. That still would have taken a lot of time, but it took a lot of time to do that. And I had to develop a technique to do that. And I had to like stop and think and go, how am I going to do this? How am I going to have, even if I just shoot them on a green screen, how am I going to have this person talking to 3 different versions of themselves? And I had to like come up with a methodology of how I was going to film that and how I was going to make it match up. And it took some trial and error. And some of it we had to do more than once, because we'd go back and look at it and go, okay, that didn't work. Let's try it like this. And, there are things like, in the mirror scene where they're on the mirror ship and Mirror Allenby's talking to Avalon Allenby, and you're seeing, you see a shot where they're both there and they're facing each other. That's not even a split screen. That's the AI roto brush. And then I'd have to go, okay, we're going to start with mirror. We're going to shoot all of Mirror's close-ups, right? Shoot all of Mirror's close-ups. And then we bring in another actor to be over the shoulder. So, because you're not just seeing this character, you're seeing the other character over the shoulder. So we bring in another actor to be the over the shoulder. Shoot all the close-ups. Then we do the 2-shot where they're talking to each other. So she would shoot all of her mirror close-ups, her mirror side of the 2-shot. Then she'd go change her makeup, her clothes, all of that stuff. We'd stay locked down on the 2-shot. She'd shoot the other side of the 2-shot, and then we would do her close-ups of the other character with the same actor being the over-the-shoulder. Then in post, we take the actor being the over-the-shoulder out and use green screen plates of the real actress to be the over-the-shoulder. So
wow,
it was kind of a convoluted process, but it worked. There, in fact, there's one shot where they're in the briefing room on the Avalon ship, and there's 3 of her. And so there was a logistics. You can't just have her endlessly. I mean, she was endlessly changing her clothes, but you had to have an organization to it. Shoot all of this character's close-ups, then shoot their part, then shoot this one, then shoot this one, then shoot their close-ups, then shoot their close-ups. You know, it was exhausting. And so, yeah, it took a lot of planning. It took a little bit of trial and error. But yeah, and where we complicated it was that we were shooting 2 other films at the same time. That made it even worse. So, you know, our shooting schedule would be, you know, on Saturday, we'd show up for a shooting weekend. On Saturday, we'd shoot everything for Crisis that we needed to get done that weekend. And then on Sunday, we'd be shooting either Knights of the Void or Once and Future Captain. And so we weren't devoting an entire weekend to any one film. We were, you know, doing this and that. And I got the idea for doing that by looking at a call sheet from Stargate SG-1. And I noticed that they wouldn't shoot just one episode. They'd be shooting, okay, they're going to go into this room and they're going to shoot all these scenes for this one, then this episode, then this episode, then they're going to go in here and shoot scenes for these 3 episodes. And so I was like, that may be the only way to do it. And so, you know, maybe we would have shot Crisis faster if we had devoted entire shooting weekends to shooting it, but we didn't. We were shooting multiple films. The other complication was we were shooting based on people's availability. So we'd have a weekend and be like, okay, this is the Vance weekend. This is when Vance is coming down. So we're going to shoot all of Vance's material for these 3 films. This is the Warren Hawk weekend. This is the Jennifer Rader weekend. Quite frankly, it's astonishing that we shot any films at all like that, but somehow it worked.
I'd have to say, based on, like, I think, what was the actress's name that played Allenby?
Alexandra Rexford.
Yeah, I think I don't think I could have done that, because just on the weekend that I came up, and when we did the Council of Menard scene and me having to switch out, because I brought my uniforms with me that weekend. And when you put me on the green screen and just having to switch that out, that was kind of a headache, you know, because I'm like, okay, what part do I have for this? And I got to clip this on. I got to do this. And then just switching that out was kind of a hassle. So to do what she did with speaking lines and remember where you were and having to look at this while you say this and look at this while dude, that would have drove me nuts. And I couldn't have done that, you know, because me just looking, you know, and having to switch uniforms, that was a pain. So tip of my hat to her for that. You know, if she ever watches this, you know, podcast, like, tip of my hat to you. I have a lot of respect for you for that, because that, man, I couldn't have done that. So
have her watch it. Be like, hey, I've got some beef with some of these shots here, and I want you to listen to it right here on the changing of the uniforms.
Let me tell you something. We put her through an experience. There's no other way to put it, because she didn't just want to wear a different uniform. She wanted every character to have a different look.
Yeah.
You know, so their makeup, their makeup was different. The hairstyle was different for every character. And then she gave every character a different personality. She would take my direction and then give her own interpretation to that. And something you guys got to understand is that the studio's not climate controlled. So you cannot shoot in the summer. You will die. It's an oven. So you're shooting in the winter. So we started in October and we finished in March.
So to add to the logistics and complications of filming, you basically have to block out a no shoot during the summer kind of thing. So
Yeah.
there's three or so months that you can't use. Okay. Gotcha.
Right. And then we came back and we did pickup shots again in October, like, about 6-7 weeks ago. And so it was like, because we'd gone through and we made the movie and went, okay, we need these pickup shots. And we went and did another shooting weekend. But it was in that transporter room scene where they beam in and they all meet each other in the transporter room scene. We had a logistic there where Caitlin Bailey, who is one of the actors, could only be there that day. So we had to shoot that transporter scene that day, which meant we had to shoot it at like 10 o'clock at night in November. It was 25 degrees in the transporter room. We shot that scene. It was miserable.
That's a little chilly.
And so with Alex, she's sitting there at Warp 66 Studios. It's freezing. And she's doing her makeup and her hair and her costuming over and over and over and over again in freezing weather.
Oh,
She was a warrior, dude. There's no other way of putting it.
oh my God. Yes.
You bring up Kate, is it Caitlin Bailey?
Caitlin Bailey.
You bring up her, and I told you this when I watched the first rough cut. You told me this joke a long time ago, how it was she comes down off the transporter and she kind of just all googly eyed at Chikande, and it's that running gag of where he's the in her universe he's the soap opera star or whatnot, and I have to say, like, that character, how she plays that character is so fucking charming, dude. Like, how she's all googly eyed at him, and then at the briefing room table, how she just laughs, at his joke, is so dumb, but I love it. And then the payoff at the end credits, when she's watching Star Dates of Our Lives, like I found myself just laughing out loud at that, because it's so over the top. And it's one of those things where, like, fan films just don't do that type of, humor. Like, you and I have almost the same type of sense of humor. Like, we laugh at the dumb things in life. We just smile because it's like there's so much dark shit out there. But we get the same type of sense of humor. And I loved that, because I remember there was a time where, Avalon was not that way for you. And to see that put back into this film, I loved that. And I loved her performance of that, because I was like, man, I hope one day I get to meet this actress, because I really loved that, because she sold me on something where I was like, I don't know if that joke's really going to land. I don't know. And I loved, and I know it's a Jonathan Lane, element to the story, but the love child,
The love ship designation Excalibur.
Yeah.
The
LSD.
yeah. Love ship designation. Like, I love those two. Like, I love how, we focus on the three main Allenbys, but then we've got this whole other one where it's like, oh, she's just as cool. And I when you told me about that, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like that. But I fell in love with those two, and I was like, there's my boy Tyler. Like, dude,
it was a good chance for him to be in it. Gave him an opportunity to be in the film.
Yes.
It's interesting. I'm not normally the kind of person, and I don't know what filmmaker is, that just lets other people, like, hey, I had an idea for your film. Normally filmmakers don't do that. Normally that's like okay, yeah.
I got an idea for you. Take a hike.
And I let Jonathan Lane and Sam Cockings write entire sequences for this film.
Mm-hmm. Alternate universes, it's fine. You still write them in your universe.
And they both came to me. Jonathan comes to me. He didn't ask permission, by the way. He just wrote this crap and sent it to me. And he goes, hey, I want you to read this. And I'm like, okay, Jonathan. And then I read it, and I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. I was like, is this going too far? And then he played a card with me, and I'm not going to say what it was, but he played this card with me where he was like, oh yeah, well, and I was like, damn you.
What was
You're
it, an
right.
Uno reverse card or something similar?
It was, he just, look, Vance talked about he and I having the similar sense of humor. A few years ago, Vance did a film that that I saw, and I'm watching this Vance film, and I'm going, was that a sex joke?
Yeah.
Oh, there was another one, and another one, and another one. Yep. And I was stunned after I watched this film, and I walked away, and I went, I'm looking out the window, and I'm like, Vance had an idea that he was going to do a film that was all sex jokes, and he just didn't. And no one told him he couldn't. Yep. And that was an epiphany for me. That was like, maybe I could just do whatever I want and not let anyone tell me that I can't, and so that, all I can say is that Jonathan played something like that to me. And I said, and I started thinking, is that going too far? Well, no, because again, Sam said earlier, he talked about the Flash and the Arrowverse had a lot to do with inspiring what we're doing. And I remember that, now again, the Arrowverse steals from Rick and Morty, by the way, but they had this scene that was the Council of Wells, and they had like Wells the Gray, like, 'tis I, Wells the Gray. And I was like, well, then the way to eat in hippie universe is 'tis I, Wells the Gray, or any of the you compare it to the transdimensional Council of Ricks, the artist formerly known as Rick, or the scientist formerly known as Rick, or whatever. It's like, yeah, you have to go a little too far. And so I thought, okay, let's do it. And then Sam, this is where I got to give Sam credit, a lot of credit. Sam came to me, called me on the phone and said, hey, I've got an idea. And he walks me through this entire Stargate thing. And I was like, and he just changes the entire opening of the film. And I went, dude, we have to do this. And he got to work, man. He got that all together. He got Nick Cook to be in it. He and his dad and Nick shot their parts. Sam put it all together. He was like, how cool would it be if you just had, this really cool sequence with these because I got these Gould motherships, and I got this. And I was like, sold. Because it hit me how neat it would be to open up a Star Trek fan film in the Stargate universe. Like, no,
brilliant.
We have to do this.
It's completely different. It completely changes. Yeah, it completely changes it. Yeah.
Question for you, Sam.
Oh, okay.
So the question for you, Sam. This, at one point, the goal of this film was to have it released on Black Friday. And that week of, Josh, you were telling us that I can't remember if Josh or Sam or both of you said that essentially that release date had to be changed because there was some last minute, we really should do this. This would really add to the film if we spend this time. So I'm curious, what was it in the film that had you guys push back that release date to make it come out when it did now instead of the original date? Could you tell us what was it?
Well, it's a combination of he wasn't done, I wasn't done. You can't really rush renders, especially as that last big shot took like multiple days, full working days of work. So that you can't just rush that. So he wasn't done, I wasn't done. We could have like cut stuff to rush, but at that point when we're thinking what adds to this, just think of removing stuff feels weird, and there's no, the date is sort of arbitrary. And so I said, Josh, okay, let's release a trailer on that day. Because, the important thing is the Halloween thing, let's do a trailer, let's release something out there. And I said, well, you don't necessarily spoil the film. Let's do a Stargate thing because we don't use the Stargate stuff enough. And I have all this stuff, something, right? It's you're the creative here. So I was trying to think, what can I do quickly, not easily, but, something that's really interesting that kind of grabs people. And then Josh said, that's great, we'll do that as a trailer. And then he said, or we can make that the intro. I wasn't expecting, 'cause there was a trailer. But then that changed the context. And it's like, oh shit, that's the best idea to cold open with the Radical. And then it became a little bit bigger, just a little bit. And then we had to then pull up later. And then once you knew that the trailer kind of pushed it anyway. The trailer got scrapped just for let's finish the film. That was like, well, it's already big, and it was kind of a deadline is looming, and you can't really rush certain things.
So when you say that, do you mean like, for example, whenever I do the editing on the podcast that I do, when I click that green start button, there's nothing you can do. Basically, if it says it's going to take 2 hours to render, it's 2 hours. All you can do is just sit and wait. But in your case, you're talking about a render job that's going to take a couple of days or more. So all you can do is wait. There's nothing at the mercy of the software.
I mean, that big shot is like 160 manually set up render layers, all of which, because it's all, because each ship fades independently. So you've got to do it in layers. Then you've got to work out who's actually in front of everything else. So there were a couple of versions I didn't send you, Josh, where I had some ships that weren't in the foreground, they're in the background. So suddenly things are phasing out. It's like, why is the ship behind the ship? Be very careful. But it's just a case of it was too ambitious. There was too many things to do.
I fought so hard to make this film. I had to go through some really hard stuff just to even get to the point to be on set to roll camera. It's like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that I got to some of the lowest lows in my life in some ways, where I had just period.
Okay.
Where I had lost my job to the pandemic. I had no money. It was like I had to start my career over, kind of stuff. And I had to start Avalon over. I had to start Avalon from scratch twice between 2020 and 2022. I had to start over because I felt in 2020 that Avalon was not headed in a direction that was my direction. It was going in someone else's direction. And I felt that it needed a clean slate. It needed to start over. And I kind of turned to a support group to help me with that. And I turned to the wrong support group. And that was a lesson learned. And I just had to come to terms in 2022 that there was no easy way to do this. I was going to have to do this all the hard way. I was going to have to do it all the hard way. I was going to have to start from scratch with everything, with my career, with my fan film franchise, with my health, with whatever, and just work my way back and just do it the hard way. There was no other way to do it. And I have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into building it all back. And there was so much just to get to day one of filming. And so it's like, if you're going to fight that hard just to get to day one of filming, then by God, put everything you got on the other end too. And so it was just like, let's make this the best film we can possibly make it. It didn't take a lot of convincing. There was that kind of thing in me where I was like, oh, I want to be able to be symbolic and do it on Halloween. But it's like, no, the film became more important, and it didn't take a lot of convincing. And
we
especially
went with the creative idea, well, the things we could add. It was not what we were losing. It's what we could do, and not just Stargate stuff. But I think I submitted 6 new, you could have these shots since we've got time, just to fill some of the filmmakers' why. I'm like, you could put something there. Here's a finished shot. Like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Josh, was there
a point
or not, but they're there. You could use them.
Josh, was there a point where you wanted to tell Sam, we need to finish this fucking film. Stop adding things. We've got to close it up.
No, we were
get
parallel, not finished. We were
no. Actually, no, because I know Sam well enough to know that he's always going to do that. and I've learned to trust him. So
I'm quite honest, as are you. So
Sam's not going to say something to me unless he truly believes this is the right thing to do. And so if he's literally coming to me saying this is what I think you should do, then it's worth listening to. He's a filmmaker too. He goes through all these same struggles. So I have learned to place a lot of trust in him. And that's what look, that Stargate sequence, he wrote the script for that. That was all him. So it's sometimes you can get so competitive and so egotistical as a filmmaker that you damage your project. And it takes some effort, I think, to open up and say, okay, Jonathan, what do you think? Vance, what do you think? Sam, what do you think? And let me tell you something. In 2019, I would have had a much harder time asking Sam for his opinion. He gave it to me anyway, but I would have had a much harder time asking, but I'd learned to trust him. So I could say, Sam, here's a cut of the film. Tell me honestly what you think it needs. And if you had told me in 2020 that I was going to go to Jonathan Lane and say, Jonathan, here's a cut of the film, just for the hell of it, give me your notes.
That is a risk, yeah.
I would have said you were crazy because I wanted to murder Jonathan Lane in 2020 when we were actually making a film together because he never stopped giving me notes. But I went to him and I said, Jonathan, let's pretend this is Interlude. Give me your notes. And he gave me a very thorough, very interesting set of notes. And I said to him, there's a lot of great stuff here. Just giving you the warning. I may not take your suggestion, but I will read it. And that was true of everyone who gave me their thoughts.
Quick question for you. For anyone that's not quite as versed on everyone in the fan film production industry, like myself, don't know everybody yet. Give us a little context. Who is Jonathan Lane? Uh-oh. Do I regret asking that?
It's an interesting question.
Who is Jonathan Lane? Well, no one can tell you. Nobody could tell you better than Jonathan Lane, but so Jonathan Lane is
can you do his voice? Can you do it in his voice as well? That'd be too fun.
Jonathan Lane is he's sort of the default beat writer for Star Trek fan films. And he has a site called Fan Film Factor where he blogs certain Star Trek fan films.
You need the cup. Into the famous cup, the sippy cup.
But who's Jonathan? He's a fan like the rest of us, and he's from California. He spent many years involved with Starfleet International. He's like an admiral in Starfleet International.
He worked on Hidden Frontier, so he's OG original fan film generation.
He was in Hidden Frontier, and he was involved with the process of that, and. Over the years, he just kind of became, the default fan film behind the scenes blogger. And when the guidelines happened, he for a little while was sort of the champion of fan films and saying, hey, let's do this. And he had this group called Project Small Access because the Paramount Plus used to be called CBS All Access. So he had this group called Project Small Access. And eventually that group was renamed Fan Film Forum. And that's where this Vance Major guy was posting all his films and where I met him. And so Jonathan's just this blogger. And I made Ghost Ship in 2018. And he called me on the phone and he was like, hey, would you be interested in directing my film Interlude? So I ended up making, which is a fan film of a fan film, where it's in the Axanar continuity, and so I ended up spending 2.5 years of my life making Interlude, and that was quite an experience. I was ready to kill myself by the end of it, but despite it being just like a difficult filmmaking experience, somehow Jonathan and I ended up being like really good friends on the other side of it, which was a surprise. And he helped a lot with Crisis. He was very heavily involved.
Yeah, Jonathan and I actually, because you kept saying the name, I was like, I know the name. We had been corresponding on Facebook about doing something this month here in December. I think it's in regards to isn't there like this annual fan film award thing, kind of like the Academy Awards for fan films each year?
Yeah, he has a thing called the Showrunner Awards that he does.
Yeah, and we're supposed to do something with that. So yes, okay. I'm bad with names, so you'll have to forgive me on that, but getting a little better on that. Okay, so that's perfect. So yeah, and I know he did the blogging and whatnot, which is which is awesome. And I think that for you guys, for something like this, do you really feel like you're going to bring more of an audience into fan films? Do you feel like this can be a turning point of fan productions, not just for yourselves, but for others that are doing these fan productions?
I don't know what's going to happen. I'm always surprised.
Yeah.
I tend to think that I'm going to post a fan film and it's going to get shredded, that people are going to be like, this film sucks. Look, I made this film called Doomsday, and it's this prequel to the Doomsday Machine. And I directed this film and I made this film, so I can say it. It's awful. It is a steaming pile of garbage.
CG is pretty good though.
And CG is probably what makes the film work.
Sam did the CG.
Yeah. And so I make this film, and I was just like, man, I'm going to post this film and I'm just going to get destroyed. I'm just going to get barbecued. And so I just kept working on it and working on it and working on it and working on it. And I released it, and it gets like 150,000 views, and everyone loved it. It's winning awards all over the world. I'm like, what? Why am I winning awards for Doomsday? You never know what's going to happen. Look, I didn't expect Ghost Ship to get 600,000 views. I expected to get 6,000 views. I thought this time we'd be like, remember that time we made a Star Trek fan film? That was fun, wasn't it?
You thought you were going to get drummed out of the business right there with Doomsday?
Yes. Here's what I will say. And this is important to me. Before the guidelines and before the current era of Star Trek fan films, it was so competitive to the point that you were in one camp or in the other. There were like 4 or 5 big productions. And if you were associated with one of those projects, everybody else was the enemy. And there was the people from CBS actually described it as an arms race. It was like, who could have the most Star Trek actors, who could have the biggest budget, the best special effects, whatever. But behind the scenes, it was a nasty rivalry. And when I came on the scene post guidelines, it was like there was still a huge remnant of that. Like, all of the people that were still involved with fan films may not be the big boys, but they had a connection to one of the big boys. And so those little rivalries were all still kind of there. And I kept going to film set after film set and hearing people say things like, imagine what we could all do if we started working together on projects. And I was like, why can't we? And so I just sort of forced the issue with a lot of people and went, hey, what if I bring Glenn Wolfe down to Neutral Zone Studios? And he does costuming for Tales from the Neutral Zone. And Ray Tessie's like, okay. And then, I bring him down, and they shook hands and got to work. You know what I mean? And what you see is there are a lot of people from the fan film community in this film. You got Sam. Sam's a huge respected filmmaker. It's not just that he makes his own films. He works on like everybody's project.
I have a big IMDb now. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's in it. Nick Cook is in it. And Nick Cook's been doing fan films for as long as fan films were fan films.
Well, he's the longest running fan film producer who's stayed active. Everyone else has paused, so they might be started earlier, but he's done 20 years of non-stop fan films. No one else can say that. So he is the OG for current crop.
And similarly, George Kyan, who, look, when I was 14 years old and wishing I could make Star Trek fan films, George was doing it. Yep. And so he's in it. Frank Parker Jr.'s in it. Vance is in it.
My dad's in it.
Your father's in it.
Many times. Yeah. Let's not underdo his performances.
It was his birthday. He showed up on set on his birthday.
60th birthday. That was his Mecca. That was his trip.
And I said, if you're coming to the studio, man, let's put you in the film. And he was all over it. He was great. Big guy too. Mm-hmm. Big dude. I wasn't expecting him to be that tall. Yeah. And then, Then we have this section where they're viewing the multiverse. They're viewing a scan of the multiverse. And when you look at that scan, you know what you're seeing? You're seeing other fan films.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing Starship Farragut. You're seeing Star Trek Continues. You're seeing Trek shorts. You're seeing Constar. You're seeing Nature's Hunger. Yeah, I could go through all the lists, but it's like all of them are in there. You know, well, I mean, not all of them, but it's very, very well represented. Dreadnought Dominion. These are the Voyages. There's a shot from Intrepid in there. So it's like, to me, I had this viewpoint of filmmakers should, especially in Star Trek fan films. Look, like I've told you before, we were all once the nerd at the lunch tables getting made fun of. We should all be making these films together, not being rivals. You know what I mean?
Not at all. Yeah.
You work better. You guys work better together. And I'm sure that's increased the quality of work because you're able to collaborate amongst all the different groups, different people.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's always going to be like, hey, Josh, I don't have this. Do you? Oh, sure. Or, hey, Vance, I don't have this. Do you? Sure. I mean, I think, Josh, you still have my motion picture uniform that you borrowed for one of the films. And hell, I think the jacket that I wore, or that James Lewis wore in one of my things, you're like, dude, I fucking love that jacket. I was like, do you want it? You're like, dude, can I? I'm like, also, one of these days I'll send it to you. You know, it's like, that's the way it should be in these type of films. Instead of people saying, well, dude, here's the link, you buy it. You know, it should be one of those things where it's like, hey, man, if you want to hear, I'll send it to you. Use it, send it back whenever whenever you're done with it. Or, you know, like Josh, like, you know, I've said many times, Josh is like a brother to me, you know. If I got something, I'm not going to use it, you know, fuck, I'll just send it to you. You can have it, you know, because I've known you for so long. If I need to borrow it, and I'll borrow it back from you, you know, just fucking take it, you know. That's the way it should be in these type of films, you know, because he's absolutely right. Like, we are just fans at the end of the day. We're not super important people looking to make a career off this. We're not that important, you know. I mean, sometimes some people would like to think that they are, or, you know, they like to fluff up their ego. But at the end of the day, we all got a job. You know, you go to that 9 to 5, and we come home and we like to play producer. You know, on the weekends we go do our films, but you know, we're just regular people. You know,
Paramount's not going to hire us to come work on Strange New Worlds, but we can make our own stuff. And one last thing I want to point out on that thought is what I've noticed amongst fan filmmakers is we all have different strengths.
Yep.
And so my thought was, what if we could exchange those strengths? For example, okay, you've got Neutral Zone Studios got those big sets, but they struggle with things like props or costumes. Well, again, that's why Glenn Wolfe showed up, because Glenn is like a one-man art department. Or what if I could go take some pressure off of Dan Reynolds on the Federation Files and help behind the camera, and so they could get more into the nitty gritty of their performances and their acting, and then Glenn could bring to bear that art department skills. It doesn't just elevate the quality of my film; it elevates the quality of their film. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if we were just kind of, okay, you do your thing that makes you cool on my film, and I'll do my thing that makes me cool on your film. Holy moly, everybody's film is better. And that's my thought process.
Well, that was one reason why I was able to get through 160 some fan films, because I had so many people to pull from and work together. Even though most of my films were Combox films, it's like we had so many people to pull from. And I love your mentality of connecting with all these different people, you know, like Ray Tessie, you said, Glenn Wolfe, you said, you know. And I think even though there are some people who would shine a negative aspect of fan films, I really think there's a bright light to be there. You know, you've got your Sam Cockings, you've got your Joy Benoist, you've got your Dan Braylands, who do CGI type stuff. You know, like you said, they all have their different strengths and looks and whatnot. It's like you kind of just go, hey, you know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let me pick this one. Hey, you want to work with me? Yeah, let's go do it. Then you go and you work and you do whatever. It's instead of people who are exclusive and like, no, I don't want to work with you. It's like there's no reason to be that way. Like you're right. We used to have that lunch table that why are we excluding anybody? We're the last people we should be, especially if we believe in that idea of Starfleet, Infinite, Star Trek. Why are we excluding anybody? One thing I do want to say, and not to make this about myself, but I personally, and yes, Josh, that was an inside joke to you that only you and I will get. But I do want to take a moment to say thank you. Josh did something in this film that when we talked about Crisis, he was like, "Hey, this is what I have that idea for Crisis. Are you interested in doing it?" And my mentality is always like, "Sure, why not? You know, I'll fucking do it." But I did kind of have a I don't know if you'd call it a stipulation or request or whatever. I did say I do want to do something. Do you mind if we do this? And I threw it his way and saw, I threw it at the wall and see if it would stick. And he said, "Yeah, I don't see why we can't do this." I said I wanted to give Menard a happy ending, and not in the sexual pursuit kind of way. That's Avalon After Dark. But I wanted those who have watched my films know that I tend to write tragedies, for Menard. Either he loses his wife, or with Eobard, there's the Valhalla Stone where he gets trapped in for like 80 years, or the Constar crashes and whatnot. But it's not filled full of sappy, happy stuff. I wanted for this film, because I felt like, okay, if this is the last Avalon film that's done, and I knew I was retiring, if this is the last film I do, for a friend, I want to give Menard a happy ending. I want him to have his wife. I want him to have his adopted son. I want him to go on and captain his ship. I want him to have everything in this film that I couldn't give him in mine. So I talked to Josh and I said, "Can we do that?" The way I pictured it was Menard walks down the hallway walk into the to the Constar, and there we see it. And Josh did something that was better than what I envisioned. He has Menard beaming off with Eobard and Emily, and they we actually see the Constar. And I have to say, Josh, one, thank you for giving the character a true send-off. And two, thank you for doing that as a personal favor to me. I really appreciate that. I can't thank you enough. I thought it was respectful to the character, and it really touched me a lot. So thank you.
Hey, it's from, again, to me, it's like, what are friends for? Yeah. And if Vance comes to me and he says, "Hey, I'd like this for my character," or Sam Cockings comes to me and says, "Hey, let's do this really cool Avalon sequence or really cool Stargate sequence," I'm like, why not? We're not trying to we're not making some film that's going to go out there and make a whole bunch of money and it's got to be this or that. Dude, we're doing this because this is why we're living our dreams here. We're putting ourselves in the Star Trek universe, and whatever way we want to do that, we have a right to that. If you want to tell some silly story where a guy's in a shuttlecraft and meets himself 6 times, go do it. If you want to do a film that's all dirty jokes, well, go do it. Again, that is what this film is about. And I want to be real clear about the message. There's this kind of that pinnacle moment when Prime Allenby and Avalon Allenby are talking to each other, and she says, "I spent my life becoming a captain because I thought that's what everyone wanted me to do, and I never asked myself if it was what I wanted." And she tells the main character, Allenby, you have a choice. You can live your life however you want. Don't let anyone tell you what to be, who to be, what is or is not your path. And that message is not be a selfish asshole and don't care about anyone else. That's not the message. The message is be true to yourself. You know, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and Allenby is named after that character. She's named out. The character is named after my daughter. I haven't had much sleep, but my, you know, that was kind of something. A message that I'm leaving her for her is that you can be and do whatever you choose. If you decide you want to be a chiropractor, be a chiropractor. If you want to be a WWE professional wrestler, go do that. You know, like, no one has the right to tell you what you do with your life. And, you know, that, again, that stems from the message. The thing that I learned in the process of making this film is nobody has the right to tell you what your art is.
Question for you. This is, and that's great advice that you give there. I really think that you should, if there's a thing that you want to do or to aspire to, do it, and not let others say, well, you can't, you're not good enough, you're not allowed to, you can't do that. So that's a great piece of advice there. One of the things that I thought was unique about this film, and you don't see it happen a whole lot, when there are a lot of films where you can tell when characters are speaking, actors are speaking, you can tell they're on a set. It sounds like they're talking on a set. Mm-hmm. But in this, it was like, it wasn't that way. It was very clear, very episode-like, movie-like quality. And I'm curious on that part is, how are you able to not make it sound like the traditional, yes, we can tell you're on a set because you're talking to the boom mic and that's what's picking you up.
It's really damn good. What do you mean?
Well,
it's great. How did you do that?
I think it sounds terrible, but
really,
I appreciate the observation. But I've been listening to it for 6 months. It's a variety of things, you know. We did use a boom mic, and so 90% of it actually is audio on a set. You know, it actually is the production audio. There's a very limited amount of what we would call automated dialogue replacement, or ADR, mm-hmm. where we re-recorded some lines in a sound booth. There was a little bit of that, but there wasn't a lot. But so it was a combination of classic sort of sound mixing techniques combined with, and it was a tricky balance to figure out, of using an AI tool that will clean up your audio. But if you don't know how to use it, you can almost make it worse.
Right. And
so it's like, you know, and I had to redo it over and over and over again to find the proper balance. And I still don't think I did in a few places, but you know, it's just like, okay, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So, you know, it's like, I've always said that sometimes I'll spend twice as much time on the audio as I do the visual. That's not true here. I spent a lot of time on the visual, more than I normally do, but yeah, it was a lot of just exhaustive work, from being anally retentive about the positioning of the microphone while you're on set, and really monitoring those levels. And we didn't always have a sound person. We had because of the nature of how we were shooting it, like, our crew would vary, you know, from weekend to weekend. So sometimes I would have a camera operator. Sometimes it's just me. So there were weekends where I was the only crew there was. And so it was just a matter of just making sure everybody was mic'd correctly and that you were monitoring it. And then, because you know what you can and can't work with in post, and going, okay, let's get as close to great sound as possible, and then just work with it in post. And that's what we did. It is I do have a background in filmmaking and broadcast television. And so like, I've been to film school, I've graduated from film school, and that included really extensive audio courses. And so, yeah, I leveraged that because I know how to do it. So, and I think there would be some really good audio experts that probably listen to that and go, geez, dude, really?
Well, I thought you did great. Vance, if you don't mind, if you have any question you could field real quick, I have to literally just get up and yell out the door to turn off this light that's interfering with my microphone.
You're good, man.
Give me a second.
You're good, man. One thing, I've told you before, Josh, my favorite scene in this is where it takes place on the Mirror Universe Excalibur, and it's where Mirror Universe Allenby is talking with Prime Chakande, and she kind of gets up in his face, and the lighting you did on that was really, really well. And it's their positions of where they stand. And I don't know if either one is necessarily right or wrong. It's just a matter of their position. And I felt like the lighting, the camera angle, the philosophies, I felt like everything just kind of came to a head there, and I loved that. For me, I felt like everything in the film kind of came to a head there. So for me, that was my favorite scene. My question, and this is both for Josh, and then Sam, and then Big J. What are your guys' favorite scenes? Because I'm curious. I know each one of us has a favorite scene. What is it and why?
Well, let me address the scene. I've got to, just out of professional courtesy, address something about the scene you brought up.
Sure.
That scene was conceptualized by Victoria Fox. It was her idea. And that was one of the contributions that she made to the film, was the idea for that scene. And then she was also originated the idea that the Mirror Universe characters would be dressed more in civilian mercenary type outfits because it was, post invasion. So I want to give credit to her for that because it's only fair because it was her idea. But I wrote the scene and directed the final iteration of it. I liked that scene. I thought it would turn out pretty good. One thing I will point out about it is that the emblems on the doors, the Mirror Universe emblems, they weren't there. We put those in post.
Excuse me?
They were. I saw that. I saw in one of the early things. I actually told you, I was like, "Hey, man, did you notice?" And you're like, "It'll be there in the final version." I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I know that." So the first version I saw, they weren't there. Yeah.
It took about 6 hours to do that.
Was that a pain to do when you have to put those on?
Probably would have been a lot easier if I'd had a sticker. But I didn't. But look, it was time consuming. It wasn't a pain. What was interesting about it is I was in the middle of doing it and I had Pluto TV on. I mean, a lot of times I'll just throw Star Trek on Pluto TV on and do it, and Mirror came on while I was doing it. So I thought that was fun.
Plug for Pluto TV if they want to support the channel.
Dude, Pluto TV is the bomb.
Pluto TV
my favorite scene is the confused Asian guy in a mini skirt.
That dude had some hairy legs.
He kind of, after he did it, he was like, "Man, if I'd known the skirt was going to be this short, I'd have shaved my legs and worn a thong."
Did he know? Yeah. Did he? For reference, did he know what he was parodying?
Mm-hmm. I showed it to him.
Okay.
But I mean, that's from a comedy standpoint, that's my favorite scene. But my emotionally, my favorite scene is the turbo lift scene between Prime Allenby and Avalon.
Sam,
I was hoping he's going to stick with not saying that scene. It's my favorite scene as well. He was doing good with the Asian guy. I was like, stole my stuff. That's the first thing that came to mind, because that's when I think the film kind of comes together in a way, because it is paced oddly. That's the nature of this level of multiversal swapping perspectives. But you realize she's the main character truly in that scene, and why the film's there, and and it's very well done. The subtext is all there, because I told you what I thought the scene was, and you're like, that is what it's about. Glad you got it, because there's subtext, right? Yeah, I thought that was really well done. Just on and it's funny, it's this like one of the smallest scenes.
Yeah.
It's not very good. But that's the point. It's also where it's placed and how it's framed. It was very good.
You know, you have this. Yeah, you have this thing where all this evil plot takes place, and they all almost die, and then once that's over with, they're all just like, "It's so beautiful," you know, just all this.
Office.
Yeah, it becomes all these people working together for a beautiful purpose.
Tell me again the name of the character that's the Commodore, who's in command of the Excalibur. Chakande? Did I say it right? Yep. Okay, so my favorite scene was when Chakande's stalker was watching the soap opera. I like that because it completely came out of nowhere. It did something that you would not have thought that Star Trek would have done, because it's like, okay, wow, there's still some kind of TV-esque thing that's introduced here in the 23rd century, and it's soap opera. I just thought, wow, that was so creative that you did that. And it's the little things. You did the little things, and I would have to say that scene was so unique that was my favorite. That was our
wormhole extreme moment. You know, if you ever watched Stargate SG-1, they had this thing called Wormhole Extreme where they made fun of themselves. And earlier on in Avalon, we were doing a lot of dying and crying movies, and we're still going to do that. We're still going to do the dying. That's next. We're going to go do another dying and crying movie. But we were doing a lot of, you know, character relationships and romance and all this stuff. And these guys, NerdTube, our friends at NerdTube, they did a review of one of the dying and crying movies, and Zamir Patwa was like, I'm tired of watching this bollocks, Stardates of Our Lives, you know, who the fuck is my son? Get back on the bridge, you know, and they're making fun of the film, and they're calling it Stardates of Our Lives. And I was just like, why don't we just do that? Why don't we just make Stardates of Our Lives? And so that's where it came from, you know?
You know what would be great is if you guys did that as a thing. If somebody picked that up and did several films, and it's soap opera. It's not like a film within a film kind of thing. That is what the film is. It's Stardates of Our Lives. Yes, it's a soap opera.
I tell you, the best look of it, man. The best way you could have ended that, and it was so great, was when Chakande, you know, I'm pregnant, and the lady walks off, and the other pregnant lady walks on. And he just turns back toward the camera, like typical soap opera bullshit. And it's just like, God dang it, dude, really? Like, I can't believe it, Josh. I have to say, man, it's that full circle shit of where you're laughing about how I made a film about dick jokes, and then you're making a film about soap operas, and I'm just like, this is great, dude. Like, it was so wonderful to see that. It really was a great part of your film, man. It was wonderful. And again, it's one of those things where you're watching the film at first, and you see this lady just kind of crushing on Chakande, and you're like, what? This lady's just weird. But then you see that part, and you're like, oh, I get it now. Because she's like this big soap opera stuff.
It's the setup and the payoff.
Yeah, it's such a great gag, dude. It's so great, you know.
And coincidentally, in real life, it was kind of the opposite. Like, Warren was all about some Caitlin Bailey.
Oh,
when he was on set, yeah, he loved her, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, I mean, yeah,
romance
it is
on the
kind
set.
Of the full circle thing on that. Look, if you can't make fun of yourself, then who are you, man? You got to be able. You can't take life too seriously.
Yeah,
and that's what I loved about Look, that's why it was so easy for me to go for Stargate when Sam brought that to me, because there's so much of Avalon that's actually Stargate. You know, where we're doing the wormhole extreme moments and the 200, and I mean, to be honest, there's some a Crisis on Infinite Excaliburs that the plot came from a Stargate episode. You know, I was like, how am I going to do a multiverse thing? And I went and watched a Stargate episode called Ripple Effect, and that kind of gave me some ideas of where to start with it.
Oh, that's excellent. I loved it. I loved everything that you did about this film. I'm going to have to rewatch it for sure. And I really think that you're going to have people talking about this so much, and it's going to be big. And
hope they're talking about it in a good way.
Yes. Yeah. It's going to, trust me, it's going to be in a good way. And you're going to get the attention, the exposure. I think, honestly, I would have to say that for me personally, and I guess kind of selfishly, I am glad that I am able to talk to you guys about this and be in some way a part of it, not just an outside observer in the whole thing, being able to see it before it came out public, being able to talk to the guys behind the scenes of it, being able to talk to you, to all of you about the film itself, and to have this kind of thing where we do the interviews, we go into it, we have that deep dive discussion about the film, which I think is a big plus, if I may say. And I think you're going to get that. You've got my podcast doing it. I'm sure Jonathan Lane is going to be doing some stuff on it. Who knows who else, but
Nerdtube. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow, you're going to have a lot of attention, which is good. But only caveat to all of this is don't let anybody else become the podcast of Star Trek fan films. That's my market. I've cornered it. I declare that. So if I see anybody,
we will support you on this.
Yes, I see anybody trying to jump in, I'm going to send them private message. Listen, this is Big J. I've been in here for a while. You need to just,
all
take
those
a hike.
3 weeks. You've been here. You're here. Long time.
Hey, there is an opening for a guy who covers certain Star Trek fan films.
I'll take it.
That position is open.
That position.
In the community.
We're not going to go there. Not going to go there.
I will take it. Now, I know there's an inside joke there that I think I might be aware of, but.
So on that note, is there on that note, Josh, what do you have coming next, man? And where can we find your stuff, brother? If we want to go find more of the Avalon films, where can we go?
The channel on YouTube is just called Avalon Universe Fan Films. I kind of changed it from Avalon Universe to Avalon Universe Fan Films because we're putting Tales from the Neutral Zone. We put a Constar on there, so we're opening it up a little bit. Gosh, it's like it never stops. Four fan films. Yeah, 4 fan films became 15 or something now. And the day that I finished Crisis, the next day I was out shooting an episode of the Federation Files called Mother that's going to come out in the next few months. It's a cool film by Dan Reynolds. We had the next thing that's going to come out is going to be another Tales from the Neutral Zone, which is the partnership between Avalon Universe and Neutral Zone Studios. And the neat thing about this film is it's going to be a true Neutral Zone Avalon crossover. So those characters from the Prime universe that you saw in Crisis on Infinite Excaliburs, Captain Allenby, Commander Mason, Commander Zoza, those characters are going to get their own Prime universe film in Tales from the Neutral Zone. So we're going to cross into the Prime universe and see them go through an adventure on their own where the Avalon universe won't be involved, but would be our characters in the Prime universe.
That's exciting.
And then I'm writing another Tales from the Neutral Zone that we're going to shoot in a few weeks. I'm writing an Avalon anthology film called The Omega Probe, which is the newest iteration of a fan film that's been trying to get made for a very, very, very long time, that may have had its conceptualization from somebody named Sam Cockings in a lot of the story. And it will be another big project for him. And
do I know which film that is? That's very broad. We talk a lot about a lot of different things. Do I know this film?
It used to be called Republic.
Oh dear! Which version? 1, 2, 3, or
this is me taking it and going. It's not Republic anymore. It's the Omega Probe. So I renamed the ship and we took a lot of your story and turned it into something else.
I've got previs ready to go. Just swap out the thing and they're ready to go.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's going to,
that'd be nice. That'd be nice.
And it's going to be Wrath of Khan era in the Avalon
My second one
universe.
So that's good.
You're gonna see the Wrath of Khan era in the Avalon universe. There will be a connection to the canon characters a little bit, but it's going to be about a new set of people. It's going to be an anthology film, and then there are about 2 others that I'm working on that I'm not really talking about yet. So, I'm gonna and that's in addition to work. That's in addition to working on real movies too. I'm working on some, like not fan films as well. And my hope is, in about 2 years to make a really big movie with some people from fan films. We're going to go make a real movie. So not that fan films aren't real movies. We're going to go make money off of making a movie finally.
But Joshua, the real question is, how many nacelles do I get to blow off in a real movie? Is it the right or left one or both?
No, we can't do that. And then in January, I have a film that I shot coming out in 1,000 theaters in the U.S. called Wildfire: The Legend of the Cherokee Ghost Horse. So,
awesome, man!
Lots going on.
That is awesome.
Well, Sam, where can we see your stuff at, man? Because I know there's a lot of Samaholics out there that just chomping at the bit to see more of your stuff. Where can we see your stuff at, man?
Just keep releasing more films. It was meant to be 1, then it was 2, then it was 5, and now it's over 16 currently.
That's like what I did. He's releasing a film a month.
Yeah, I managed to release 8 films this year. 9th in December. Power 543 fan films. That is me. Or Trek Yards for the day job. Obviously no Trek right now currently on, but anytime there's new Trek, we do those pretty in-depth look, especially with their ships. If you see a ship on a show of new Trek, there'll be a video, there'll be a breakdown, deep dive stuff. If you like Canadians, my coast is Canadian, so everyone likes Canadians, so everyone should watch that.
I did have a question about your Trek Yard show.
Yeah.
Because I do watch it, not religiously, but whenever I get a chance, I do. I know, shame on me, right? I will spank myself later. On your ship breakdowns, is that like, do you get specs of the ships or do you just make that shit up? Because I am blown. Like, I go to you to be like, what the hell is this about? Like, I don't know. So like, where do you get your info from?
Well, that's the initial spark of Trek Yards, 10 years ago next year, was that there's more than just Memory Alpha, which is itself a compendium. There are the books, the more official books, not just, the one random Simon Schuster. There are tech manuals, etc., that Stuart owns. And I'm slightly more knowledgeable sometimes than minutiae of a show. Like one time I had a Zindi ship and they say a weapon that Stuart forgot in the script. So I rewatched. No, you missed a thing. But it's all there. So the point of our show is to be a documentary in live action, not rather than just a page. So yeah, we don't make stuff up. That's no, that would be a no. We can extemporize, as in, say this, for example, like if there's a phaser strip on a ship in an area you haven't seen before, well, obviously it's there, it does something, or the torpedo launcher that you don't know about. There are things you can say, well, there's obviously 14 torpedo launchers because you can see them. They might not say it on the show, but we're able to look at the visuals in a way that other people can't. So it's all grounded in the real. So you can trust us. We're very, very specific on that. Yeah.
Is that, yeah, I just have to say, like, every time when I see a ship like that, I'm like, oh, I always go there and I'm like, well, they know their stuff. I didn't know, like, are they sneaking Sam's stuff? Like, hey, slip this out there. I go to you for my go-to. I'm like, I don't understand this, but I always find those informative. I love your ship stuff. So I had to know because I've never asked you that. And I'm like, well, now that I got you, I just had to find out.
Now I'm on the record. Good yeah. Good to ask me.
That's how I discovered right Sam was Trek Yards. I was watching Trek Yards long before I got into fan films.
Yeah.
I don't even remember how I came across Sam. It's been that long. He's just there. He's everywhere. He's in the ether.
When I was starting YouTube, there wasn't weekly. Literally, there was no weekly Trek web series of any kind of any platform on YouTube. There's no reviews or breakdowns or. It was ridiculous. Like YouTube feels, it's oversaturated now, obviously.
Yeah.
Back then there wasn't. And it's crazy to think there wouldn't be. But obviously there was no new Trek on for, a decade. There was no looking to be. And then we just happen to have audience then go into our new Trek content, and then, keep doing.
Yeah. The thing about Sam is that he's just a fan.
Yeah.
He's just a fan. And he lives the life. I think that he lives the life that every fan wishes they could.
Trek is my day job and my night job and my 3 a.m. job. It's been full time for 8.5 years of those 9. So
we're all envious of the way that he's able to live his life, because like me, I got to go make TV commercials for restaurants and fireplace stores.
But they pay more.
They do. They play well.
One day that I do in probably a week. So.
Well, I mean, think of it this way. Sam is such a Trekkie, and his dad is such a Trekkie. Like, you got to take your dad on his birthday to, is the Star Trek set. That's what your dad's birthday. That's the type of life you and your dad are living. You make CGI. Your dad gets to go to Star Trek set like that. That's life you guys are living. Me and Josh are thinking about opening up our own OnlyFans. That's what we're doing.
Only feet, I get it. Feet
together.
Yeah, right. Our numbers are so low; it's together. That's.
I'm gonna have nightmares.
So, hey, that's all I got. Big.
And look, man, I wish my dad not gonna go to a Star Trek convention with me. I'm. Of course, my dad's famous, so that would be, he's famous for sports and football and all that kind of stuff. So it's like he wouldn't want to cry. He's a Star Trek fan. He just doesn't really let anybody know. You know what I mean? He's the one that got me into it. He's the one that's like, hey, watch this show, and put in the original Star Trek, the original series, and made me watch it. But he wouldn't go to a Star Trek convention with me. So it's neat that you're able to share that with your dad. Yeah. Me, if I want to spend time with my dad, I got to go to a baseball game. Not that I hate that, but I don't really share in Star Trek as much with my father. So that's a neat thing that you get to do that with him.
Well, literally my Christmas present to him this last year was making the film for him, which I then released. And so imagine on Christmas Day, I literally hand him the script, and he's like, what is this? I'm saying, let's read it together for the first time. And he's reading it, and it's like, no, this is you. And he's reading his story for the first time live.
Uh-huh.
Very happy about that, because it's, it's Romans and it's him.
That's sweet.
And it's actually a surprisingly good film. I'm always surprised at how well they turn out, especially when I write them like 3 days and you film them on Christmas, getting to see your dad live a Trek life is nice. That's why for this film, the cameos, that was throw any TNG. Because same with Josh, you could shoot your own film any day to put yourself in any costume at any set, but it's actually doing it is other things you could do. So there's an opportunity to put yourself in a situation. It's like, Dad, you're getting a cameo present. There you go. Now you got a picture of, you see lots of pictures of him in doing stuff. So there's a picture of your Enterprise D. There you go.
Guys, I'm going to say,
I got to go get Royce.
Yeah.
I got to go take care of Royce. So I'm going to have to cut it short here.
3 a.m. here. So.
Oh, wow. You guys got to get to bed. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for sitting down and talking with us. Crisis on Infinite Excaliburs. If you have not seen it, please watch it. It is a game changer. It is spectacular.
And well done, Joshua, again, because I know exactly how much work that took. So
you and between the two of us, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Good job, Sam and Josh. Yeah. All right, well, that's our review, and you guys have a good night.
And okay? Jefferson, thank you for taking the time to cover us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing it, and so anything that I can do to cover, help, bring more, exposure to it, please don't hesitate to let me know.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can support us at patreon.com/BeyondTrek.